Right, so we saw the Ahava which is Messiah in the Nefesh, from the abundance in the greatness of the Eibishter, the Gedulas, Ahavaya, it's an union from the Spashkas, the Gedulose Ba'ilametz. And we saw that there was in that the union from Ribui Hanivroim, and we saw there was a union from Gedule Hanivroim. And we discussed how that's a union and even from that Ein Cage Bashir or Cloud. Shebazeh Niro V'Nikhe Gedulas Havaya. So we discussed the whole union about the cosmos, the Surya and even from Ein Cage Bashir, etc., etc. And then we brought down the Medrash Tilim, and we saw another Oifen in that general, his oneness of the Baruch HaOmar, V'hoyo Ha'ilon, how all the Eilamas come about mitzad Amira Achas, even though in the Lashon of the Zohar, B'derech it's written B'machshava Achas. But there is a certain Gilsa in another part of the Zohar where it's written Amira Achas. And so Chassidus also is Mekayim that Gilsa, that it's hard to say that B'amira Achas. And the difference between saying B'machshava Achas or B'amira Achas is moving. This is Machshava is a koyach which is much more modal from the Metzius. A man thinks that it's not tied to the Metzius of the Eilamas, but the Metzius of his life, as the famous Satan has it. It's put down in Ayom Yom from Trachten wird Gornish. Just from thinking, nothing happens yet. You know? But by a man's even thinking is a union for Havdalah. So Lamaila, so we say B'machshava Achas, so we mean on a koyach duty mugbal stu miyuchad with the Eibishter, but we say B'amira Achas, and that already brings it down into a lower level in Gilui Elikus, and yet nonetheless we say even there it's only Amira Achas. Yeah, well, that shows just how Ein Aroich the Elam Asar B'Klau to Amitius Inyan from Elikus. The whole there, we saw that was his boneness Baha'ora, Helakisa Mislavesh Ba'elametz. That's a bit where we were holding. So despite all the greatness and the unbelievable Ein Shir case that he sees in the creation and in the cosmos of the cloud, he comes to the conclusion that nonetheless that all of that is only a Ha'ora Bilvad from Etzem Elikus, which is L'mayla L'gamri, from all of that. And we just said if we say Amira Achas and not Machshava Achas, then that makes it even, as it were, more appealing, the whole union from one Amira that could be this unbelievable Ein Cage. And so therefore that makes it, the union Elikus is Yoker Ba'enov, and he's got a tremendous Yisraelis of Cheftzei V'Ratzainoi to be Dog in Elikus. So that's one Inyan. So now we see a new, a further, what you might call vista in the Inyan of Avos Hashem. The Kasher Mizbeinen B'Ho'er Ein Seif Shalamayla Mi'Eilamas. If the Ike's boneness is in the Eibishter is light, the Ein Seif, how it is Lamayla Mi'Eilamas. Eish Mufla Mi'Eilamas. How it's mufla, meaning wondrous or withdrawn or transcendent from the Eilamas. The Klolos Ha'er V'Achayas Eloki Amislabish B'Eilamas. He said, because what's the calculation in this Inyan? That if you take the whole generality of the Eir V'Achayas, which was Mislabish, which entered B'der Pnimius into the Kelim of the Eilamas, like we just saw before. Afilu B'Eilamas Yenim Hu Ha'ora Levat, like we just established. Aval Achmas Ein Seif Hu Mufla Hu Mutal Mi'Eilamas, but the very essence of the divine light, how he is miyuchad with the Eibishter's essence, then that's Mufla Hu Mutal Mi'Eilamas. Umasik B'Zeh Eiches V'Even HaFloah. Now this thing we had earlier, before we began talking about the Nakudas Ahava, we discussed these two types of hisbonenus and even clearly in a general way. We saw there was hisbonenus in the air, which is mislabish ba'ilamas, and then we saw there was what we call the union of hasogas hashlila, that was possible for him to be masik al chaponim by way of negation and what we call withdrawal. The oyer had is l'maylam in ha'elamas, but he can only do that in an indirect way. That's to say that the inyonim he knows in the chiyuv, he shoylol and he negates and literally detracts of those inyonim. Now they are in the higher madrega, but that doesn't mean that he's actually being masig in the higher madrega per se, but he gets upon him a recognition in the haflua. And then we saw that there's somebody who's medactic, b'yesa, and has a very high ishtadlus and devotion to these oifane asoga, then he can even come to a appreciation of the what you might call the quality and the manner of that reflow. In other words, we saw he can even have some asoga in the actual hafloa of the madregas haseive from the madregas mamale. We saw that that's a very high madrega, and he can only do that, but there's shlila, but nonetheless we said that this shaykh to have such a asoga. So therefore he comes to that union of that type of asoga also brings to an ava. It's also got a ava which comes as a result. But he days it through that form of asoga that we discussed before. Bo lidei ava rabo. Now he comes to a unlimited ava. Ava rabo sheyakpoich ba'atzmus say that he wants, and he's gone on the word yakpoich in Hebrew means rotzen pnimi. The word chayfetz means rotzen pnimi. Stam the word rotzen means even an obliged will. And the famous raya from that is the lotion which occurs in many places in our sages. Well, not many places, but in certain places, that you can beat a person until if you need him to say reitza ani al pidin, he has to have a rotzen on a certain thing, then you can beat him until he says reitza ani, and that's considered a rotzen, even though it came mitzad beating him, mitzad echreach, of it's called rotzen. So therefore we see that rotzen is a where Beklal mensch indicates even that he wants it. It doesn't matter mitzad what. He says he wants it as he wants it. But that's in for rotzen. Aber yachpoitz is from the word chayfet or chofeit, but that means the pnimis harotzen of the mensch. That's called cheftzoi. And therefore we see often in Siddur the two lashonos that follow one from the other, ritzoi noive cheftzoi. You start off with a more outward rotzen and then you come to a more Pnimius rotzen. So in these madregas where he's come through such a tremendous effort in the Stadler in Rufnius to go up through the different levels of the Hasogas Achlila, and he comes to an appreciation of the even afloa of the which we call it Badera Cloud, the Seivev Kalam, and the Atzmas, Al Shlomaila from the Eilmas. So that brings him to the he wants to even Pnimi, Shiachpoitz. Ba'atzmus Berein Seif. He wants only the inifan, atzmus of the divine light. In other words, mamish miyuchad with atzmus is about. Or kamoi, like it's written, David HaMelech says in the Tehillim in Perik Ayin Gimel, just near the end, he says, Mi li b'shomayim ve'imcha loy chofachti ba'oretz. So this is the famous statement made by David HaMelech, that he says, Mi li b'shomayim. Who do I possibly have, even in the highest madregas harayah in the heavens? Mi li, meaning could anybody possibly satisfy my longing for Elokus just from what you can offer me, b'shomayim, meaning even in the highest madregas harayah called shomayim. The word shomayim in Rufnius is a term for high madrega, how they call elevated and transcendent madregas. And then he said, Va'imcha, Loi chafatzti ba'oretz. And he said that even though I'm down here, ba'oretz im cha loi chafatzti. Anything which is only with you. In other words, anything which is not you yourself, but it's with you. In other words, it's some form of revelation of you, of it's not you yourself. And it's well known that the word imcha in the Lashon of Lashon Kodesh, and even in certain places in Divrei Chazal, the word im with the ayin, meaning with, can mean botel too. Yeah, imcha means that which is botel tofel lecha. So that's even a higher in here. Shamayim, well, that's obvious that there are only Giluyim, there are only revelations in Gilead, I'd say. But Im Cha means that which is Mamish Botel to you, meaning even the which is Mamish Kolul, Etz Lecha, Be'atzmus Cha. He said, even that, Loi Chafatzti Ba'oret, even though I'm down here in the world, my love is so great that I don't want anything, even that which is Im Cha, even that which is Tofel, Botel, B'teich Atzmus, even that I don't want. Abamila, that's a tremendous statement on the part of David HaMelech.
How can Imcha be together with Aretz?
Huh?
Aretz refers to generally the lower level.
No, we just explained that Imcha means Tofel Ubotel Lecha. I just wanted quite a few sentences about the word Imcha, meaning Tofel Ubotel, meaning that which is Niklau in the Atmos.
Right, and then it says, Leich Fatzi Ba'aretz.
No. Doesn't mean Leich Chafatzti Ba'oret. It means even though he's Ba'oret, Leich Chafatzti, I feel that which is Imcha. In other words, his Madrega is so great that he doesn't want even that which is Imcha. We just, I went into, I just was masbid the whole thing, I think, sufficiently. But he says, Leich Chafatzti, he doesn't want it. Leich Chafatzti, he doesn't want even Mitzad Rotzon Pnimi. He doesn't want that. Now this is the famous statement based on that pasuk and on that understanding in the pasuk. This is the famous statement made by the Alter Rebbe. What everybody's familiar with the famous, that's also brought down in the Maimah, what we mentioned. That the Rebbe said the famous Maimah on Yud Aleph Nisan, Toshin Lamed Aleph, where he touches the Pikeach, the different Madregas in the Pikeach, that he was there when the people came in with the king and the whole business in the Medrash. And so he brings down over there that this is, it's written in Derech Mitzvah Selcha. The Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, brings that he wants her from the, well not he wants her, he heard it a lot, from the Alter Rebbe, that he heard the Alter Rebbe, Bisman Tfilosei, he used to say, ja, ich will nicht gar nicht. I don't want anything. Ich will nicht dein Gan Eden, ich will nicht dein Olam Haba, ich will mehr nicht als dich allein. I only want you yourself. Familiar, I heard the famous story. So the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, writes that. He brings it down in the Sheresh Mitzvah Satfila in the Derech Mitzvah Selcha, quite late in the piece, not right at the end of it's a long mimer, it's about 48 prochim in that mimer, it's a big long mimer in Derech Mitzvah Selcha. About 2/3 of the way through, or a bit more, he brings down that story, and he writes in brackets, K'may Shomanu Rabbeinu, Nishma Siyednu, that means the Alter Rebbe. And he brings there, he used to say, and the Chassidim add to that, it's brought down in other places, B'Shem Chassidim, but the Alter Rebbe used to bang his head against the wall when he was holding by Madregas like that, right? In the Maz. The Maz with the Alter Rebbe used to bang his head against the wall. So it was a big shaila how you do a tefillin, but if I say he used to avoid the tefillin, but once he damaged his forehead very heavily, it made a big bruise and a big wound in his forehead, banging his head against the wall, so they put cushions all around him. Yeah, they built cushions all around the area where the Alter Rebbe used to daven. So that if you would bang his head against the wall, he wouldn't do any damage. And it was when he used to say that inyan, and so the Rebbe and Tzemach Tzedek, they connected with that pasuk. to say, you know, I don't want anything. Eloi b'shamayim ve'afilo imcha gam lo chafatzi. Gornish, shum davar, rak atzmus ein seif. Itself, not as dich allein, as we connected with that posse. Well, we're talking about here about a very high madrega. That's a madrega gevoya in Ava and in Shukah to the Eivishter. Because he says about that loy yirtu shiapis batzmus ein seif k'moy libi shamayim ve'im chalecha fatzti. Shelo yirtu b'chol hagiluim ki'im tachlis cheftzei v'retzoinoi hu b'chinas atzmus eiroin ein seif. In other words, he doesn't want anything at all. And Olam Habo, I mean, Olam Habo means that means all the Giluim after Moshiach and after Tchias HaMeisim. That's going to be just unbelievable. Gilu Ein Seif, Ad Ein Tachlis, Ad L'Neitzach, talking about it, how in the end. Nonetheless, he said it's all revelations of the Eivishter. Lorota. He wants only Atzma saying save himself. So it's very surprising how everybody manages to remain so calm and without any sign of any particular his pilots, etc. In these classes, we have to assume this from the fact of having learned in Chabad and being aware of the greatness of the Shlita, of the Chochmah, being of a Das, so everybody remains very calm, even though they hear these unbelievable. So later somebody should have gone out through the window or something. That's what the Alter Rebbe said. That's what's written here. You have to come to a Zayinian that all you want is Atzma saying, say. You know the story with the Badija talked about going through the window. That was another thing. It wasn't connected with Mamish, but he didn't say that his bonus from Atzma saying, say. Oh, you know the story about the Vadisha with the Lulav, you don't know the Master. See, you guys, you're not up to all the balances. There's once the Vadisha, I believe it's Vadisha, he bought his Lulav and he got it all ready, but you can't make a bracha on the first night in the Sukkah on the Lulav, you got to wait till the next morning. That's when you. So the whole big Birin says why he's supposed to have to be mamshik the maki for the sukkah, then he can be mamshik the eating of the lulav, which is on chocolate. But Pnimi is supposed to have the maki for the sukkah. The whole big Birin says what it means is you can't use the lulav till it's neitzach hamoy, until the beginning of the sun the next day. That's when you can. So he was sitting the whole night. He couldn't, he was going out of his carrier. He can't make a broch on the lulav. He's got to wait till the next morning, the Levi to Vaditya. He sat the whole night, and he put up at the family, or they made a mistake, that they put the lulav and esrog inside a glass cupboard. It's inside a glass cupboard. So the whole time he's watching the clock and he's building up this unbelievable, this lava, to make the bracha on the lulav. And all of a sudden he just sees the lulav, he forgets the glasses, and he went through the glass. He just went through the glass straight into the lulav, even though it was Yontan. I say even the master is, that's the type of Yislavas that you guys are supposed to have. When we already got the window broken anyway, somebody would have gone through it. It wouldn't have been such a terrible, damage. But we're going to see something even more amazing than that in a second. Yeah.
So how is what the Alter Rebbe wants is different than Mashiach, or is it different than wanting Mashiach?
Oh, that's very good. Yeah. Yeah, we have to say that with that, what the Alter Rebbe was indicating, that he was already holding by the Mashiach. Mm-hmm. And he said, therefore, he wants his atzmus itself. But according to what the Olam Habo implies, that you haven't necessarily got the atzmus even in Olam Habo. Mm-hmm. So it all depends. What it boils down to is, this is sort of taking us slightly off the track. But it's a very good question that you ask. Because the whole union of atzmus is going to be mishkalat after when Mashiach will come. But if I say that it depends, you know, what your attitude is going to be even when Mashiach comes. And the fire, there's a famous mitzvah what the Rebbe I always say about a Farbrengen. There's what the Rebbe told, the Rebbe said, it's not a story, but it's like a, you know, how do you call it, an epigram, how do you call it, a vote, that when Mashiach will come, that the Chassidim are going to go out to meet Mashiach. And they're going to say to him, Shalom Aleichem Mashiach. And it's very good that you came, you know. Well, there's another miser with the bottle of mash, you know the miser with the bottle? We can just go on. There were all these misers, we're not going to learn anything. But the Chassidim are going to come out to Mashiach with a bottle of mash. Anyway, we kids it. Well, with a bottle of mash, we'll have to talk about another time. So, the Rebbe said that the Chassidim are going to say, listen here, Mashiach, this is, you know, this is Givaldi, but now, from now on, it's all going to be just Gilel, of course, you know, laid on, you know, it'll be just there, you know, Gilel, of course, Adin Tzvei, Adin Tachlis. What's with the Tzomah L'chol Nafshi? We want Tzomah L'chol Nafshi. We don't want this, you know, Elokus. We want it to yearn and struggle, you know. Even after Mashiach, even after you're here, you know, we want that should continue. So the Rebbe said that Mashiach will listen carefully, and then he will say, okay, all right, guys. It'll be Tzomah L'chol Nafshi. I feel I'm already here. I feel Mashiach is already here. But there'll be the Inif and Tzomah L'chol Nafshi, which means that even with all the tremendous Gilel Elokus of the Chassidim, what they've already understood Gilel Elokus, they already have a bit of a musik rochik of Al Chabonim Efes was a musik in this whole Inif. They're going to go only for the Atzmers. You know, the Chassidim are going to go only for the Atzmers. Mashiach is already right from the very beginning, he's going to give the okay. Which means that even after Mashiach will come, that the Chassidim, the Chabadskis are going to be very restless. And they're not going to sit around with their crown on their head, you know, enjoy all the Elokus. There's going to be tanks, Liasid Lovi also. The Chabadskis will be driving around in tanks and they'll be saying, listen here, don't be satisfied with this. We can have Atzmas. Just straight that you want Atzmas. You get Atzmas. He'd say, what's all this, these Giluyim? You know? That's what you have to do, Liasid Lovi. Kacha Hayamun from that his father's from the river. I remember very clearly that day his father said, I got into the wrong place. I got stooped away and I was crashed onto people's feet and everything. But I heard that, at least that part of it. Right, anyway, by Rosh Hashanah for bringing, if you didn't know where you were standing and what you were doing, you could really cough it. I was a bit naive. I thought you could just go over anyway, you know. And then there were certain people that had these tremendous chazokas, you know. They had these pre-established places and all sorts of things. So if you came there, you know, you just got oops, you know. You were bodily ousted from that. And then there was this huge form used to come down and slam down after every pass. They also had this huge form and so they cut off everybody from one side to the other. So if you stood underneath that form, you could just be cut into two pieces. You could chop you into two without any Rahman. So the next thing I see this form coming down. So anyway, what it means is that you got to want Atzmas. That's what it means. Yeah, merely v'shamayim v'im chalei chafatzi borat shaloi yiltze klal agiloi ki'im tachlis cheptze v'rtzein hukis Atzmas saying. Well, we didn't finish yet. But Klolis is boninus elu hein betfila. You can find all these boninus in your davening. If you take the early part of davening, the Pesuke de Zimra, Ais boninus he begedulus havaya beinim brias visavas oilim. V'yeich shebamayim ha'echad nivru kol ha'elim. So everybody will tell me in one chorus where that's written. It's written at the beginning of Psuchi de Zimra, Baruch Sha'oma V'hoyoha Oilon. With one statement, all the elements there came about, and the whole the Psuchi de Zimra talks about the greatness of all the different creations and all the Inonim, all the heavens and the earth and all the other Inonim. So we see that we appreciate in Psukim de Zimra, and we praise, and we literally speak out the greatness of the Eibishter in the Brias V'Savas HaIlumas, V'Yeich Shebemayim Echad Nivro Kol HaIlumas. Yesh mi Mi'ayin Mamish, like he brought down at the siyum of that whole. So that's Psukim de Zimra. Over Birchis Kriya Shema, what is the Ikar? He said the Ikar of Birchis Kriya Shema is Kodesh, Kodesh, Kodesh. So he said that that would be Inyan Kodesh. The Nakuda Klal of all Birchis Kriya Shema, after Ishtaba, is the Inyan of Kodesh. Eiksha Erein Se Kodeshu Mudalu Mufla Mi'ailmas. Because the word Kodesh means withdrawn. How do you call it? Transcendent and withdrawn. So the Ika is bonus in Birchis Kriya Shema is how the Eibishter is moved up and how he's mufla. That was the second inyan we brought here. That's expressed in the word Kodesh. Yeah, and you say it 3 times. What is Mavur? In Derech Mitzvah Socha Barichas, both in that Maimah that we mentioned and another Maimah over there, and in the Kutiter, the famous Maimah in Pasha Moyer. I'm going to get to the 3 types of Malachim, what they say Kodesh. Then another says Kodesh, Kodesh, and another says Kodesh, Kodesh, Kodesh. There are 3 different types of Malachim. The Alter Rebbe is Masber, the Ikar is Boninus in Birchis Krishma is the the Havdalah and the Aflua of the Erin Seif, Miho Elemus. That's the Indian of Birchis Krishma. And now he's a Kriya Shema, Haiku, is Boninus be Atzmas Erin Seif. In other words, that in Birchis Krishma you actually jump up another slav, and if you say that the Avis is Mudal or Mufla, then you say, well, let's go to him, let's just go directly to him, as it were. You can't do that, there's no way of a soga that you can do that, so ain't no chanami. But nonetheless, the Indian of Shema Yisrael, Ochaponim, leads one in that direction. It leads you to that Indian of the love that the Alter Rebbe had of not wanting anything, only Atzmas Erein. So, because in the brachas of the Kriya Shema, you're more concerned with the relationship there, the Hasogas Hashlila, as we called it before. But in Krishma itself, then you're more concerned directly with the Havdalah absolute of the Eibishter, completely from Oilamet. What he said before earlier in the Maimah, that you can't really be masig that, and Einochanam, you can't really, but you can long for it, and you can go out to it, but you can cast yourself out at it, and you can say, as we're about to see, certain things which that implies, or certain things which we can deduce, as you might say, from that feeling, even though we can't really be masig it. And that's what he says now. But Krishma, Hoika, who is born in this Biatzmas Erein, say, and that's what we have to say, that's what the Alter Rebbe meant when he said, Mili b'shamayim v'im chaloi chavati. We have to say that he didn't say it when he was saying Kriyat Shema, because you're not allowed to say anything when you're saying Kriyat Shema. So that's one of the interesting little sort of tidbits of inquiry. When did the Alter Rebbe say that? Because he was actually heard to say it. So when did he say it? We have to say before he began. So or after. Yeah, because you can't say that he said it just before he said the Shema. It would be a bit hard to imagine Azam so tough. There's put down another Maimah from the Rabbi Rashab that he was heard saying it when he rolled on the floor the altar. I can see you guys are all so puzzled as it is. You're so shaken by all of these inyanim that it's not really the point to go into that one. But he was once rolling on the floor, and he was heard saying that, not with tefillin on this time, heard saying, there were certain inyanim by the Alter Rebbe, which by the other Rebbeim we didn't necessarily see. And that would sit there every now and then the Alter Rebbe would just toss himself on the floor and roll over. All sorts of amazing inyanim. We're saying Kanamochim. To be married, but nonetheless it did happen. So, says the Rebbe, that's the Indian of Shema Yisrael. So how do we get Kilu from the words Shema Yisrael to such a type of oneness, such a type of reflection in Atzma Sein, which you can't really reflect about it. So, how does it link? How do you get to that height? So then he said, V'zeh inyan Shema Yisrael. So he says like this, that the word Shema, if we just take the word Shema, is Miloshen Havana. That means to understand. For example, you say to somebody, Shema, listen here. That means pay careful attention to what I'm saying. Yeah? And there's a Loshen, where is it written? By Shmuel, I know it's written. Shema ki daber avdecha. Listen carefully because I'm about to speak, or please speak, and then I will listen carefully. In other words, that the word to listen, Shema, implies to be misboinen in what somebody's saying to you. In other words, to understand, and what you might call pick up clearly what he's saying. So that's the word Shema. So Shema Yisrael. So he said Shema first of all is Loshen Havana. V'Shema, and he said another inyan in Shema, Hu inyan Shem Ayin. That the word Shema divides itself into Shem and Ayin. I might say, well, what is that? So if you looked in the Sefer Torah, or in your Tefillin, or in a Mezuzah, or if you ate B'zeh, and you see that the word Shema is written in ordinary letters, but then it's written with a big ayin. So we call the ayin Rabosi. Ayin, which it has to be a certain number of oases, the size of an ordinary os, a big ayin. So therefore, we kilu al-pi penimis haTorah, sometimes we talk about like it being two syllables almost, as you might say. Shem and the word and ayin on its own. So he said Shema is a Shem with the ayin. V'hainu, k'moishe b'chinas malchus, oile b'zayin taktoinim debino, shehu inin ayin rabosi. He said, well, that is the inin, like we just said, of the big ayin, the ayin rabosi. That's what makes it separate on its own. So what does he mean with that? The word Shem, as well known, means a name. And it's well known that Hashem is on the one hand connected with a person, and in a way very intimately connected with him, because if you say a person's name, then he will listen to you. All of a sudden, it will shuttle him. If he's not paying attention, and you call his name, and he'll all of a sudden show attention, because the name touches his essential being, and therefore it's brought down with Kutei Torah, Pasha Bolam. The Old Torah brings down that all of the chayes of the neshama, how it's mislavish in your guf, all goes through the name. But it doesn't go in a revealed way. It goes b'derech elim, but your name is negeh to the whole hamshacha of the chayes in your being, both b'pnimis and afilu b'makifim. Therefore, the minig Yisrael is if chas v'sholim v'as melahazkir, somebody is very ill, then you can alter his name or add to his name. And that brings like a new ashpah, and it's hoped that through that it will bring a new gilead, the highest, etc. Because the name has a big inyan, but with the inyan of chayes, but it's not begolui, it's not something that we see. When you say your name, let's say you're called Avram, and you say Avram to yourself, or you let somebody call you Avram, you don't really see how that's nogea to your chayes, but it is.
And how is it that you can have two people with the same name, and one of them, they can be not well, and the other one can be...
Yeah, that's a good question. They both got the same name. So what is brought down in the Sifra Kabbalah is that every name has got all sorts of different oisia, it's got all sorts of different implications, all sorts of different combinations of those letters, and so on and so forth. So one person being called Avraham doesn't necessarily mean that indicates how the other person's called Avraham. If they're not just, because the word Abraham's got all sorts of different ways that the oishis can function, and they can indicate all sorts of different hamshachas of the name, and so on and so forth. It's just that, generally speaking, we call him Abraham.
So the name plays out in the actions he does, or in his...
Yeah, it plays out, yes, it even come to the type of actions that he does. But Be'ikr, it's got to do with the way the neshama is machaya the body and gives life into the body. And gives the ordinary function of what we call the yichud of the nefesh with the Eivra Haguf. It can also affect even the way he acts, and it can even certain ways that he will act and that he will relate to the world around him. It's got to do with his name. Yeah. But these are all things that are not begolly. They're all not things that we can just say, oh yes, that's clear that this and this is the case. So that's the Indian of, if we take the Sphira of Malchus, Lamaila, then we find all these inyanim reflected. And therefore, the Indian of Malchus is called name, it's called Shem. Even though all the spheres are like the name of the Eivshter, but Malchus much more. And therefore we see that on the one hand, Malchus gives over into the worlds only a ha'orel bilvad from all the other kus, even how it is in the Esser spheres. And it's well known that Malchus said, you know, for withdrawal of the whole etzem ashpon gives only a ha'orel bilvad, just like the king, he only gives a reflection of his own self into his running of the whole country. Yet, on the other hand, we see that the Indian of Malchus, that ability to run all the Oilamas and to literally conduct all the Oilamas and to bring them about, well, that comes from the essence of the Eivshter. So that's the pshat that the Indian of the Shem is connected in some way with the Etzem. And like we see, that's also a very hidden thing. The fact that it's mamish connected with the Etzem is even more hidden than the way it gives forth chayas. So the same with Malchus. On the one hand, it's connected with the Etzem. On the other hand, it gives forth all the chayas into the Eilamas. But in both of them, it's behelim. First of all, it's not clear the whole kesher of the Ina for Malchus with the Etzem of the Eivshter. And zweitens is, we don't really sense the chayas that we have. I mean, we do sense it, but we don't really know what it's all about. And chas v'sholem, a man can live feeling that he has chayas, but he doesn't necessarily connect that with Elikus Afila. Edifar, the Indian of Shem is a good name for Malchus because it's got all these inyonim about it. So now, the Ayin, he said that indicates a madrega of Moichin. So that's a madrega of Bina. This is very complex inyon. I'll just try to give it over briefly because it's not really the main center of our whole discussion here. I will suffice it to say that Bina is already Moichin. Chachma and Bina are the Emitis, they are the Etzem minion of what's called Moyach. However, in Bina, just like every individual sphere, then Bina has also got what's called Esser sphere. It has in itself Esser sphere. The difference between the Esser spheres, how they are in Chochmah and how they are in Bina, that's a big discussion. But what's the principal inyan for our purposes is that Bina is the aspect of the Moyach which leads eventually to awakening Midas. In other words, you can't really have an arousal of Midas unless you have what's called a proper reflection, and these bonanas which lead to that Midas. You can have natural Midas, that's another ma'aseh. Natural Midas are not so good according to Silas. I mean, they're there, but you're not supposed to just act, only on your natural midas. Therefore, genuine midas and emerson midas, they come from his bonana. And they come particularly from Bina. The Chacham is too withdrawn to produce mamish the gila of the midah. So therefore we say that inside Bina, the Bina's got the lower 7 spheres which are kolul in Bina. It's the fact that each sphere is kolul from Esser. They are already shy to the Inifamidas. They're how Bina is ready to go down and be mashpia into the Midas and arouse the Midas. And that's called the Zayin Taktuinim of Bina. In other words, in every sphere, the last 7 spheres are called Taktuinim, Gabi, the first 3 spheres, which are Chokmah, Bina, Das, and they're called Elyonim because they're more, as we'll soon see in a second, they're more shy to the Etzem. The other 7 spheres are already the beginning of the Ashpur to our time. And in Bina particularly that way, because the whole union of Bina is to be mashpia to midah. Ultimately its whole purpose is to provide to midah. And therefore, inside Bina, the 7 lower spheres are like a very important aspect of it. And therefore, those 7 spheres are called the Zayin Taktuinim of Bina. But since we say that everything is kolul mi'eser, So they're also krulim miyasa. In other words, that each prat is also kolol from 10. As well known how this is the spheres in Olam HaTikun. And therefore, 7 times 10 is 70. And that's the inner of Bina, how it's ready to give forth into the midas. That's called Aleph Ayin Rabasi. Why? Because the midas are already called small Gavidat. But the way it is in the Moichin, before it reaches the midas, it's called big time. That's what you call Rabasi. It's still the inner of the midas, how they're in a very high state. They haven't actually come out in the midas, but it's how Bina is preparing to give rise to the midas. That's what we call midas Shabbat sometimes it's called. And even in that Kufa there's Madregas. Achaponim Klolius, that's the union of midas Adayah B'Techa Seichel. So that's the union of Ayin Rabasi. But since it's a midas how they're still within Bina, then it's a very high Madrega. It's a level which is basically still separated and moved out from any shoyrush to the worlds, because the worlds come about from midas. The worlds are the beginning of the Ashpoya. The midas is what leads to the worlds. The union from Bina, albeit gives rise to the midas, but it's not shayat to the worlds yet. And therefore, that's the union of Ayin Rabati. It's a Ayin. It's got shayat to the midas, but it's still they are within the union of Moichin, with the union of Bina, and Shem is the union of Malchus. So how do they get together? So the Rebbe says that every now and then Malchus has an aliyah. In other words, that Malchus has an aliyah, in the sense that Malchus also literally rises up and elevates into the level of the Moichin. Which means that even though Malchus is the shurish of the whole Ashpoya into the worlds, into the elements, it's the direct Ashpoya, it's the king, it's the giving of all the inyanim into the world, like we said, the union of Shein. But it goes up and it rises and it becomes batil and misbatil inside the union of the Ayin. And that's the union from Shema. And therefore, here's a very interesting dictum. The word Shema says that you must understand. What is it saying to you, Shema? It's saying, understand me. In other words, look at my word, which is Shema, and then begin to understand. So in other words, as he's written, the Rebbe doesn't bring it here, but in a Maimah from the Alter Rebbe, and also in a Maimah from the Friediger Rebbe, in the Chasna Maimah, the famous Maimah, he said by the Rebbe's Chasna, by the Sheva Brachas, dort steht das klar. And he says that the whole purpose of the statement is that you have to have Avona in Shema, means you have to have Avona bi Hashma Atzmai, Shi Shema Atzmai Hu Shem Ayin. They state that. In other words, that's the union of the Malchus, how it goes up into the Ayin Rabasi.
This mean, in this case, Das is also included within the 7? You said that?
In the 7 midas. No, Das is not included in the 7 midas. But Das is another, medium to which the midas have to go in order to reach their emes agila. In other words, they can't have emes agila unless they go to Das. But the shoyrush of the midas is in Bina. In other words, Das doesn't produce the actual beginning of the midas, where Mashenkin Bina Das. What Das is, the Das makes them intensive and fulfilled in a way that they really come out into proper gila.
How does Malchus go into the Zayin Tachtonim? Because if you don't count Malchus as one of them, then there's 6 of them. If you don't count Malchus as one of the Zayin Tachtonim, then there's 6.
No. We mean the Zayin Tachtonim of Bina, which includes Malchus in Bina. The sphere of Malchus is way down further. The sphere of Malchus is way down here. The sphere of Malchus goes up into the Zayin Tachtonim of Bina, including Malchus of Bina. You follow? So when that happens, what happens? What does all that imply? And that implies that there are certain moments and certain times, and maybe when you say Shema Yisrael, if you say it really the right way, then you can also cause that. You can cause Malchus to have an aliyah, and as it were, the whole world becomes batil. The whole shurish of the whole illuminus is inside the union of Zayin Tachtonim in the Bina, and the whole world is just batil. You know the famous. The Alter Rebbe says in the good prayer in a place, it's very true place. The Alter Rebbe says, when you say Shema, so you close your eye, you put your hand over your eye. So he says, why? Because when you say Shema, even the word Shema, he said the whole world becomes batil. And the whole world's not there. So he said, that's why you close your hand over your eyes. He said, when you take your hand away, he said, that's when the trick starts. As they stated in the
And what's
Torah,
that?
when you take your hand away,
The truth.
that's when the trick begins. Because you got to now come back into the world. It's like when you close your eyes, oh, this is great, the world is bottled. When you take your hand away, then the world. So the trick is that you're not supposed to take your hand away, even though you do, but you're supposed to leave it like that.
What if you don't put your hand in the first place?
Huh?
What if you don't put your hand in the first place?
Oh, that's an issue. If you don't put your hand in the first place, then you just stop, you stay on the ground. He says, he's trying to play, we just have the world the way it is. For the beginning, let's just have a kosher world. What do you have before? I'm sorry. There's an old saying, once you learn chassidus, you can't go back to things the way they were before. That's what Rav Shmuel Munker said to the Alter Rebbe, the famous time that he had to Alter Rebbe, who gave the right to take away the time from this world, so many thousands of people.
Yeah,
So, anyway, Yedua, Ayin Rabasi, Yedua of Chokma Bina, who Habito di Chudeva, that in both Chokma and Bina, meaning that afilu in Bina, then everything is botel in an even from Yehuda Eloah, Eich Shekula Kamei Chalecha Shivei. This is a famous lesson. The Alter Rebbe brings in Perek Gimel over there in Tanya, when they get to Chochma Bina. He says, Mitzad Chochma Bina, Kula, particularly Chochma, Kula Kamei Kaloi Chashivei. Everything in front of him is like nothing. Now that's the bittul of Chochma and Bina. And that's what he says, that the Ikar Inyan of the Moichin are Koyach Ma. Even when they're revealed in something, even when they're a koyach, their whole koyach is ma. What ma means, it's a question, why is it there? In other words, ma is like what? What are you doing here? Who gave you the right to be a Metzia? Who said you can exist? You can't exist. That's what ma implies. And chokhmah is a koyach ma. Its whole union is to express that question, how can things be there? Kula kamecha kalecha shivei. They might say, well, Bina is already a bit of a Matthias. Well, that's what he said. No, gam chokhmah but gam Bina. The Bina is moichin. Since it's moichin, it's also kolol inside the inyan of chokhmah. Therefore, even though it's already ready for the Zion Taktonim, which are leading into the Midas, but it's still botil. And therefore, when Malchus goes into that, it also gets completely botil. Therefore he said that's that's what we call Yehuda Eloah. That's called the higher Yichud. Yehuda Eloah, that means that there's no real Metzias. There's nothing really there. Kula Kamei Chaloicha Chashivei. Ki Hamoichin Heila Maila Mi Eilamas Uki Yadua Be'inyan Alpaim Shona Kodma Chulu. So he said because the inyan of Moichin are beyond Eilamas altogether. This is a very famous principle. Tonight we're meeting up with a pad where they're always just throwing little nakudas that you really need to know, some of the background. So he says, Ki yadua bi'inyan alpaim shana kod matayro li uilom. It's a famous statement of the Medrash Tehillim. It's a Medrash in Medrash Tehillim. And it says that 2,000 years Torah preceded the world. Torah preceded the world 2,000 years. Alpaim shana Kodma Toiro Leoilo. So that comes along the Alter Rebbe, and he says, what's it? Taitz Alpaim Shona Kodma Toiro Leoilo. Before the world existed, there was no time. That's one other. Time only begins with the creation of the world. So what do you mean? Before Kodma Leoilo, the Torah is primordial to the world 2,000 years. So the Alter Rebbe says, it doesn't make any sense. The question it's like biting something that you can't chew. You can't say that 2,000 years before the world, there was no time. So therefore comes along Chassidus, and it says an amazing thing. Chassidus says that Alpayim, 2,000, and even though we put in the word Shona, which Shona means like a year, but what we mean with the Indian for Shona is like it's something that continually repeats its own existence, you might say, reestablishes its own Indian. Is Alpayim there's a pasuk in Mishlei, but the pasuk says, "Alef chachma, alef chabina." I will teach you chachma and I will teach you bina, and it uses the word alef. But it's well known that the word li'alef can mean to teach or to inform. Oh yeah, that's what the word ulpan. Ulpan means a place where they're supposed to teach you. They're supposed to inform you about things. So it's better to keep away from them. Anyway, it's, that's what an ulpan, that comes from the word alef. What alef means to teach. And therefore, the pasuk says, alef chachma, alef chabina. I'll teach you chachma, I'll teach you bina. So that's twice alef. So that's the title. Al payim. It's like two teachings. Well, that's chachma and bina. Therefore, that's how the Alter Rebbe teaches it. Chachma and bina are twice alef. That's al payim. Kodma le'elam. The chachma and bina, they were primordial to the world. And they were beyond the world. So, what does he mean by the fact that they're primordial to the world? Right? They're beyond the world altogether. So he said that the moichin hein lamayla miho eilam P'yidua binyan alpayim shana kodma teva. Ochin b'madrege zu hayichud hu b'chinas yichuda iloa dekula kamoi chaloicha shivei. In other words, what does he mean by saying that the inyan from moichin alamayla miho eilam is? What it means like this is Mavurim considers that if we take by mensch, for example, if we take midas, yeah, like ahav or other midas that relate to the world around us, then a midah only makes sense, and you can say that the whole mahus of midas, or the whole mitzvah, the whole, let's say, put it another way, the whole, what you might call, sense that it makes, that we have midas, is because there are other entities apart from us. And particularly other human beings. And therefore, because there's another human being, therefore there's a inyan what the Eibishter made in the nefesh called ahava. What ahava goes from one human being to another. Yira also relates to another human being. It causes awe and respect and all that type of thing. Bittul, not as all and rachamim is a much higher form of ahava. Mercy. All these inyanim, but they don't really make any sense. You can have a theoretical ahava. You can say, I really love people, I love the world, I love the human race, but it doesn't mean anything, because as long as there's nobody to express the ahava to, then it doesn't really make any point that you would have such a midah. What would it really help? And to just walk around the whole time saying you love the whole world, but you do terrible things to them. It doesn't help. It doesn't make any sense. Such an ahava. Therefore, the whole inyan of the mahus of a midah and the pu'ula of a midah is only two azulas. But without the azulas, the midahs don't really make sense, even though a person can say he has them, but they don't really make sense. Mashenkin inyan from Mashenkin inyan from moichin, we see that you can have moichin in such a way that, on the contrary, the azulas interferes. It's in a way better that there wouldn't be any azulas. Dainu, you want to really get stuck into something and really understand it and really put your mind into it, then what do? You put up a notice on the door, don't disturb, please, don't come in now, because I've got to understand a certain thing. So Chassidus asks a kasha on that we see that Talmidah Yesha Mikuram, and David Melech said that from his Talmidim, he learned more than that. So we see that if you have other people in the inyan of your understanding, then they add to your understanding. On the contrary, they don't evolve with you. So what Chassidus answers, that's two different inyanim. If we're talking about certain abilities to go back into the mokir of Seichel, then the Zulas causes what we call a Nisarus Latata. He causes like a new arousal within you to the mokir of the Seichel. And that can cause new things to come out that if you hadn't had that person, you may not have got that far. But once we're dealing with a Seichel that's revealed itself to you, then the other person gets in the way. If you want to deal with that and you want to bring it out into your mind and make it meaningful and get it all set up in your mind, how you're going to give it out to others, etc., then the Zulas is mevalbil. So therefore, it follows of his that the Gilui HaMoichin by the Mensch and his usage of his Moichin is liatzmei, and on the contrary, it makes in a way more sense to talk about Moichin how it is liatzmei, and it's more shy to him as an individual, and the whole definition of midas is dafke to Azula. And then what it says is that Kaviyochel midas the Eibush to make only by himself Kaviyochel, the design tatoinim, which are the midas, the Eibush made that only because he wanted oilers, and he had in mind that it's coming. Oh, but we could imagine that he would have moichin even if he never considered oilers. Now the truth of the matter is that everything Lamaila is not like that. The Eibush only did anything because he had in mind the ultimate kavanah. He didn't need anything. He didn't need to bring anything about or to do anything, because he's sholim b'tachas hashleimus b'li klum. And therefore, the fact that he brought about moichin means that we ultimately know that he meant with that the union of eventually bringing about oilam. What we're saying is that if you stop at that point of moichin after he'd already revealed them, then the Eibush could have got by with that. He didn't necessarily need the oilamus to help him with the moichin. But he wouldn't have made moichin if he hadn't had in mind eventually to bring about the oilamus. Because ultimately the Eibush wants to give even his moichin into the oilamus. Even Kaviocha, he wants to give everything. But we can imagine that the moichin would make sense even if the Eibush had never gone any further and he'd never brought about oilamus. To say that he's got moichin makes sense. But if he would have brought about the midas and not brought about the elements, then it wouldn't have had any point. Because the union from midas, when I say wouldn't have had any point, it means even from our way of understanding, it wouldn't have had any point, because the whole union from midas is for the sake of the elements. That's what the Rebbe means, that the union from moichin so what does that indicate? That indicates that the pnimius and be'etzem minyonim, the union from moichin is what we call aliyah v'istalkus. And therefore, when you get into a union from moichin, you tend to get out, you know the famous Mazman to Mittel Rebbe is the mountain. You guys don't know there's a famous Meiser, but everybody should know.
There's many Meisers.
Huh?
There's many, which one?
There's many Meisers, yeah. So there's two Meisers attached. There's many Meisers. About the Mittel Rebbe with the moichin. There was once when the Mittel Rebbe, before he became Rebbe, when Kavioch, he was young, inverted commas, and the Mittel Rebbe was davening in a shtibel, he was davening in a shul. And he was in the middle of davening and he was just completely gone, he was just absolutely up somewhere. So they came in the cleaner and he wanted to clean the shul. Wanted to clean the shul. So here's the Alter Rebbe's son sitting at the middle of the shul. What's he going to do? So all of a sudden, two Chassidim walked in. He turned to these two Chassidim and he said, "What this? He wants to clean. What's he going to do?" So the two Chassidim said, "Oh, don't worry about it. Just leave it to us." So they walked over to the Mittel Rebbe and they lifted him up under the elbow. See, one guy took one elbow, the other guy took the other elbow, and they just lifted him up. The Mittel Rebbe, he didn't know it. He still just carried him over into the Cheder Sheni. Was a little, and they have in the old days what they call the Cheder Sheni, the Chabadnitzer, it was called. That was also in the Mittel Rebbe famous takon. Carried him over to the Chabadnitzer, and they set him down over there, and in the meantime the guy was able to clean the shul. When he wanted to clean out the Chabadnitzer, picked him up, carried him back into the shul, put him down, and that's it. Because the inyan from moichin be'etzem is the inyan of aliyah. Its inyan is duvekis b'lamayla mi'ametzias. Therefore, when you're in a deep understanding of something, you tend not to see the matzias of things, but you tend to see how they go upwards and how they're really bottled to something beyond that. In other words, you're ready to hear how this whole circus maybe doesn't really exist. Mitzad pnimis of the moichin. Therefore, that's what we mean. That the way the Eibush made the moichin is that their inyan is aliyah v'istalkus mi'ametzias, and the inyan for midas is after you read of v'gilui elametzias. And that's the difference. And ever the Rebbe says that mitzad the inyan from moichin, then it's a bit of Yehuda Iloah. Yehuda Iloah means And we don't see the Matthias, and therefore we say Kula Kamei Chalecha Chashiva. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't have any Matthias. That's the infinite of Shema. So after speech, Shema le Baruch Shem Kveit Malchus Elolam. Is it Shehu begins Yehuda? I'm sorry. Shehu begins Malchus. Begins Yehuda Ta Torah. Now that's the union of Malchus. Shem Kveit Malchus. All those names all indicate kingship. Malchus, but that's Malchus going the other way. We were talking about Malchus that's going upwards into the Zion Tachtonim Dubina. Over the embassy in for Malchus is to make the worlds and to be mashpia into the worlds. Yeah, Lamata. Well, that's Baruch Shein Kveit Malchus Elolam. And that's Yehuda Torah. Because then Malchus wants to make the worlds and wants to put into them a gilu which will make them batel, but not batel if they're not there. Because the whole purpose of Malchus is that the world should be there. That's the whole idea of the concept of Malchus. So therefore he says, Yehu b'chinas Yehuda Malchus and b'chinas Yehuda tat Torah. The Yesh ki Malchus he makir al ha'elames. That's the mokir of the world. V'yeh shalema b'zeh she'ena elames teisim mokim cloud. You can't say l'gabi Malchus how it wants the worlds to be there. The worlds don't have any place. The Yimkein Ma Mahavim. What are we making? If we say we don't want the worlds to be, then what are we making? And therefore we have to say that Malchus does want the worlds to be. Ela Shaim B'Pinas Bitl Hayesh Levad. We want him to be there, but we want him to be Batel. We want him to be Batel, and even Bitl Hayesh. And I mean, if in Yehuda Tatorah, Kula Kamei Chalecha Shevei is called the end from Bitl Berman Shiwas. There's no entity to talk about. It's just so much batil that it's not to be considered. Mashiach Yehuda Tatorah means that we want the world to be, but we want it to be batil. That's even for Bitl Hayesh. That's even Yehuda Tatorah, and that's Malchus going in the other direction. Oh, but the meaning for Shema is how Malchus is being drawn up into the Bitl of the Meichen. Akila, nothing is there. So now we know why we have to say both Shema and Baruch Shem Kveit Malchus Elolam V'eh. Because you've got to know that everything is batil. But then you've got to come back into the world, how it's really a Matthias, and the Avish wants you to be in the world as if it were a Matthias, and to bring that bittul that you really know, having said Shema, into the world. But that's what we call the Yichud of Yehuda Eloah, Yehuda Torah. Kemavur in the famous Kuntres, that the Rebbe Nishma said in the Kuntres Eit Chaim, Barichas. But he wrote that for the Bachim and Tomchei Tmim. So since we've got to consider the Bachim and Tomchei Tmim, that they've also got a bit of a break, he can't sort of work them too hard. So maybe we'll pause at this particular point. So what it follows is that you've got to have both Yehuda Eloah, but you've got to also have Yehuda Torah. Ki Malchus he makuir alo elames. Ela shem b'chinas Bitl Hayesh. Aber gabi her ain't safe shal ma'ila mer elames. Elames ain't him teisim mokim klal. That's the gabi the emes. I know she'ein him b'chinas Matthias klal. That they don't have any Matthias at all. Mitzad the emes of Yehuda Eloah. So what are we going to do? Have to work it out. Either they have or they don't. What are we going to do? What are we going to? How do we deal with all this? So therefore he says, who? We'll see more about that as we go along. What it ultimately boils down to is that mitzad tamim hayiduim lo yisbara. That's one of the great Svedis in the whole Indian of the Bria. The Eibishter wants that you should know both of those truths. They're both true. And Mitzad Elikus they're true. Because Malchus is a giver of the Eibishter. And Malchus is Mamish Mushrash in Atzmusa. He's part of a very high plane. And remember, Mitzad Atzmusa, he wants that there should be a world that looks as if it's a world. And you've got to relate to it to a certain extent like that. But at the same time, he wants you to know that it's not really like that. Yeah. So just make it just it's not really like that, or leave us alone. Elamai, that's the whole meaning of citizen, the whole meaning of existence. Is you've got to live on two different planes, on two different levels. On the one hand, you've got to be in a world that's what the Abdi wants, that the world should have a certain place, and it should be a Matthias, and you've got to affect that, and you've got to come into it and make it the way the Abdi wanted it as a world. The only way you can do that without falling into its, how do you call it, into its grasp. The only way without falling into its grasp, you have to know that really mitzad etzem pnimius, it's not really anything. Or mitzad the kavona aliyina, mitzad what the Hebrews do, it is sure. It's a kaimash.
Pardon, sorry?
It's yes something. It is a little something. Mitzad the kavona aliyina. It's an amazing, how to call it, dichotomy, yeah. It's a form of dichotomy. It's based on the everything yichud. Really, everything is not really there. That's how you can face a world which is meant for some reason to be there. But if you didn't know the whole secret of it's not really there, then God forbid you would get caught up in it. So the only way, the way nowadays not to get caught up in anything is to say we want Mashiach now. And to say Ad Mosai, and to say Yechia Melech Mashiach. Have a good evening.